Welcome back to the 2 Months Podcast presented by Shadified Sauna Barbershop. I am your host, Joshua Marshall, and we have a very special guest joining us right now. He's an assistant coach with the Washington Capitals. This is his second time on our podcast. I think it was around this time last year he joined us, and he's going into his second season with the Caps, and he is a longtime coach and player as well. But right now he's with the Caps coaching staff. We like to welcome Mitch Love back to the 2 Months Podcast. Mitch, how's it going?
It's good, Josh. It's always a pleasure to come on here and chat a little hockey and life with you. And yeah, it's been a busy summer, quick summer. Right back to the grind here coming up, and love to talk hockey with you today.
Yeah, no, we'll have a good kind of half an hour session here, 40 minutes. But again, it's always fun to catch up with you and see how things are going. But as you said, the summer has been going on. It's going, and it's as we know, like these captain skates will be around the corner, and then that means training camps right there. But for the summer in your picture, for you and your girlfriend, obviously you got to spend some time with your family and your daughter, and I guess in terms of getting that shutting off hockey a little bit, as hard as it can be to do that, but getting that family time in, how important is that with all aspects of life, and just getting to kind of have some good one-on-one time and some good quality time with the family as well too.
Yeah, it's obviously during a hockey season, you're so driven and focused on, your job and the travel requirements and this and that. You don't get a lot of time, even one-on-one with your significant others. So for us, we got back into Arizona at the beginning of May. We just purchased a home about a year ago down here, and really had next to nothing in it. So we, spent a lot of our time furnishing and putting up decor. It's not really my area; it's my girlfriend's area. But I help her out with that stuff, and and then sprinkled in, her family came down. She was in a previous relationship with a couple of young boys that came down from Vancouver Island and visited us for a couple of weeks, and then my daughter was here for 2 weeks, and we had some work requirements. We were up in DC area in early July, and then up in Washington State, watching my daughter's soccer tournament and visiting her mom that lives up there as well. So, before a blink of an eye, you're closing up shop here in your house in Arizona, and you're getting back in the car or taking a flight back to work out in DC. So it's gone quick, but we really cherished a lot of our alone time, and obviously our family time, which is always very precious.
Yeah, no, it's interesting you say that, because I was at the Perry Pern camp here in Edmonton last week and just catching up with some of the guys that are there, and they kind of, the players, they do pretty much say the same thing you are. And at the end of the day, the summer is kind of for your significant other, because it's a grind that they put through as you put through, but getting that time to go travel and do those things with that partner you have in life is pretty cool. But it's been a busy summer for you guys, but in terms of personal and just getting some family time, and also the organization as well too, and we'll get to that in a second. But let's get into the first year that you had with Spencer Carberry and the rest of your great coaching staff that you had. Obviously, you guys made the playoffs, and being around a great player in Alexander Ovechkin and chasing Gretzky's record. But just in terms of what you saw from your group this past season, and what you can see going into this next season, as we're getting near and close to it.
Yeah, it was a very unique season, in a sense where we had new staff. Obviously, the players are getting to know us. We're getting to know them, implementing different systems. It was a bit of an adjustment. We had a slow start, and then we started to play well. I would say it was an inconsistent hockey season, but we found pockets at the right time to manufacture points to get us into the playoffs, especially even late in the year. Even as bizarre of a situation for us to make the playoffs on an empty netter in a tie hockey game in
Yeah.
Philadelphia in the last game of the season, that's probably something that won't happen, ever again. So it was one of those years we had to battle through a lot of injuries to key players, suspensions down the stretch. Tom Wilson took a 10-game suspension. That wasn't great
Yeah.
timing wise. So it was, but it really, at the end of the day, Josh, really showed the character in our locker room. That's obviously a credit to our leadership group, starting with Spencer down to our, Ovi and Carlson and Oshie, just to name a few of guys that were they were there and they had a lot of experience, obviously. So it was a unique experience to say the least, making the jump from the American League to the NHL. A little different role being a head coach to an assistant coach. Something I feel after a year's experience will bode well for me moving forward, in terms of, understanding the players, the level, the league, travel requirements. I mean, there's lots of different factors that boil into making that adjustment from American Hockey League to the NHL. And then we're really excited about this year in a sense that we've basically have added like 7 or 8 new players from free agency through trades in June. So it's really a bit of a turnover. It's gotten our roster a little bit younger. Guys will be hungry playing for contracts. So we're excited about our group, and hopefully we can turn that into another playoff year.
Yeah, no, it's going to be a fun year for sure. But you kind of touched on something there. I'm going to kind of go back to the difference between the AHL and the NHL. A lot of people can pick what that could possibly be, but for you, what was a kind of a standout in terms of the transition between one league to another? Obviously, player wise, but maybe coaching wise in terms of the rigorous times. I would assume at being a coach at any level, it's a lot of time consuming as well. But is there anything you can kind of touch on that was kind of more um, eye opening for you once you kind of got to this level here?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing I noticed was just the schedule. I mean, in junior to the American League, it's really a weekend league, based on travel and whatnot. Where the NHL, it's you're at it every other day, and then obviously you got your practices in there, and you got your mandatory one day off a week, and so your time management as a coach is very key. Your preparation, what the head coach needs from you, what the players need from you, what other staff members need from you in terms of your workload, and making sure that you're dialed and you have that, available to the players and your staff. So that was a big adjustment, for me personally. And we actually, as a team, have some of the better travel in the NHL, being out east in that metropolitan division. So that was a bit of an adjustment in terms of the coaching side of things. The one thing that I kind of noticed, standing on that bench running a group of defensemen, was just how important matchups are. Finding the right matchups at the right time, especially on the road where you don't get last change. So you got to be a little bit creative. You got to take advantage of your TV timeouts that are available to you as a team, both home and away. So that was probably a big factor in terms of making the jump from the American League to the NHL, is kind of understanding how important those matchups are. And then dealing with the players. I mean, again, it's like any level, whether you're coaching minor hockey or you're coaching junior hockey, each player ticks a different way. So you got to find opportunities through conversation and communication with the player, what suits them best in terms of them getting better on a day-to-day basis in the NHL, and maintaining consistency. And for John Carlson, watching video with him is different than watching a video with Rasmus Sandin, who's 23 and really trying to establish himself as a top 4 NHL defenseman. And so those conversations are a little bit different, with each individual. So that was, a little bit different than the American League, because the American League's still young, and you have a lot of guys that are green and they want to get to the NHL. So they're all ears. They want to watch video. They want to talk to you, where the NHL is a little bit different. You got to just manage a little bit of the day to day with guys and their workloads.
Yeah, that's very interesting to kind of hear that. Well, I know you coached the D, but talk about some of the forwards that you guys brought in. You got Brandon Duhaime, and you got Pierre-Luc Dubois, Andrew Mangiapane. There's a few others there too, but I know that in the narrative out with Pierre-Luc Dubois is probably, I would say, unfair. I wouldn't say I know him very well, but just being around the LA Kings this past year, in terms of their team kind of coming out and seeing our kids at morning skates and just walking into the arena. He seems like a really stand-up person, and obviously the skill level and what he's going to provide for you guys this year. How excited are you to see what he can do for your top six? And Mangiapane and Brandon Duhaime, like some of the great forwards you guys brought in this year to help with what you guys built last year. How excited is that going to be?
Yeah, I think management did an unbelievable job this summer, obviously through trades and free agency to address a few things. I think the one thing is we wanted to get younger as an organization, but we wanted to stay competitive. We wanted to make sure that we were a competitive team looking to make the playoffs. And then, like any year you get in the playoffs and you kind of see what happens. So, hats off to them for the moves they've made. I think in PL's case, my conversations with him this offseason when we acquired him was, very excited. He knows the opportunity that's ahead for him, playing in our top six. Where he was basically a bottom six guy in LA and a strength, they had him at center. So it was a strength of position for them in that organization. A little bit different for us. He fits in that top six centerman role for us. I think he's going to have a big year. I think he's a heck of a hockey player. I think this guy, there's still another level and a ceiling for him. I think he can get to. And sometimes, and I know that, the narrative's this, and he's been on this many teams in the short period of time. Hey, sometimes you need to find one that works for you. And I think we feel as a staff that we'll work well with him and he'll work well with us and we'll get a lot out of him. And then, the other pieces that we've added, I think just gives us great depth, a little bit of toughness, a little bit of size. I think that's going to be key for us. And again, like I mentioned earlier, a lot of our guys are kind of like at the point now where we're able to acquire them and they're in the last year of their contract. So that does make an enticing year for them to have big years. And we're hoping that, everybody stays healthy and, we have some career years from guys and that will hopefully propel us into a playoff position.
Yeah. I want to talk about TJ Oshie. You don't have to pull the curtain back here because obviously, a lot of that you would want to keep private. But, it was at his exit meeting, he kind of talked about a little how bit of a struggle it was to get going every night and get playing. And, but just the compete level that he has, the leadership he brings, the intangibles that he has, we'll see what happens in the future with him. But just from your experience being around him this year, how great is that? And also great for the younger players that were around him last year too. How great do you think that process was in terms of to show you what it takes to play in this league every single night?
Yeah, I mean, I've got a ton of respect for Osh. I mean, I had a ton of respect for him before I even got to know him and work with him and spend time with him. But then when you kind of, you peel back the onion and you're there every day and you just gain a greater appreciation for what he is as a human being and a player. I mean, he's high level of character. This guy will do anything to win. The fact that he played, probably in his mind, probably 60% of what he's really capable of as an athlete, because of his injuries last year. It was hard to watch at times because you knew he was in such a tough state, physically and obviously mentally, when that stuff's bothering you, but he still battled and guys see that. I mean, they're not oblivious to watching that guy go out and lay it on the line each night for us to win and get us in the playoffs. I mean, ironically, he scores the empty netter that puts us into the playoffs in the last game of the year, which is a cool story in itself. And, I'll be interested to see Ocean and see what kind of health he's in here in the next couple of weeks when we get out to DC and see if he can continue his career with us. And we have great medical staff and Osh knows his body as well as anybody. He's been through the rigors of the grind of his career and battled different injuries himself. So they'll do what's best for Osh and our organization. And, but he is a treat to be around every day.
Yeah, he just seems like one of those great guys to be around and learn from and absorb as much information as you possibly can. Let's talk about the back end. You talked about John Carlson there earlier. This guy, what a defenseman he is, and what a defensive core you have. And obviously, you guys added a few more pieces, and we'll get into those there. But it also kind of starts obviously with John Carlson, and it trickles down from there, and the great leadership he has. You talked about him a little bit earlier in terms of watching some film with him, but his injury issue, a big loss losing him, but having him back fully healthy this season will be a huge add for you guys on the back end. How excited are you in being around him and learning from him, and also him learning from what you can help teach these guys too?
Yeah, I mean, John was, I mean, I'm not sure, and this is probably me being a little biased of our back end. If John wasn't where he was last year at his level of consistency and the minutes he played, I'm not sure we're a playoff team. I mean, he I believe he finished second in the league to in plus minus or sorry in minutes played. Which was remarkable. He's 34 years old, and that's a lot of wear and tear. He does an unbelievable job of being efficient with the minutes he plays. Um, just in terms of when it's time to go, when it's time not, and using his stick well and his positioning. So he's rock solid, man. He's witty, he's sarcastic, he's got a ton of personality. Guys, really respect him for obviously his career and what he's done. And he's very competitive. He's sneaky competitive is what when I watch him practice and when I watch him play. He doesn't give it off like he's that way, but he really is a competitive human being. So he was good. And then, we've added a couple guys to our back end. Jacob Chikrin from Ottawa and Matt Roy in a free agent deal from LA. We feel like, on paper, our defense is better now than it was last year. Obviously, that's we got work to do there, and particularly myself with that group to make sure that guys are in the right spots and we put them in position for success. And but I like the depth we have. There's going to be some internal competition for ice time. There's going to be somebody's going to have to take a seat back than less than they had last year. So that's going to be an adjustment, and that's where the communication of from myself to the player come in handy in terms of our relationship and having that trust. But we're excited about it. I think it's a little bit of everything on our back end, and we're going to play a little bit of a different style than we did last year and be a little more aggressive. And I'm looking forward to working with that group.
Yeah, it's gonna be a good group to work with. And your terms of like where today's game's at in defensemen, and also too, throughout the summer, have you been able to kind of get on the whiteboard in yourselves and just putting pairings out together and going back and forth? Does that probably happen a lot too? But where are you at with today's defensemen, and what tangibles are very important and things that you would say? Because with your defense, you guys got a lot of mixture of great different qualities in puck moving, but also being a good stay home defenseman. In terms of that, how important is that, making sure that, all those ingredients are filled out through all those six spots every single night.
Yeah, I think as a staff, we've kind of got a bit of an idea of the pairings we want to start the season with. I mean, I would say that will probably change as we get to know each player, their style of play. We may think what works best is okay now in August, but come November it might be different. So we'll play around with our pairs a little bit. In terms of how I like to see our group play, I mean, there's you obviously you kind of want to put a guy that's maybe a little bit steadier in his own end than the other guy, so there's a little freedom that way. I mean, there'll be something that we look at in our pairings, but a big thing for me as a coach, no matter what kind of player you are or your deficiencies as a player and on the back end, where we spend a lot of time on making sure our play away from the puck is very diligent and it's very consistent. And I think every player is capable of defending in different ways that suits their game. But it's a mindset. It's having the right mindset that I'm going to be a plus player, and it's going to be important to me. And then on the offensive side, I'm okay with guys, with the right rewards at the risk of being able and being active in the rush and being active in the zone and trying to help our forwards create offense, which we didn't do a very good job with last year, and I take that personal. So I think that'll be something that we definitely try to make an adjustment with our back end, and I think we have a little bit more of the personnel to do that this year than maybe more so last year.
Yeah, I think some of the guys you guys have now and what you had last year in terms of guys coming back, I think will be a good mix. And at the end of the day, there are only six spots. So, again, like talking about the communication factor of like either who's going tonight and who's not going tonight. full disclosure, Mitch, I'm a Toronto Maple Leafs fan, so seeing Rasmus Sandin play there and then going over to you guys, it was tough to see him leave because I think that guy's a great defenseman and there's a real high ceiling that he can get to. I feel like this is going to be a career year for him in terms of kind of getting to what maybe we all thought he was going to get to earlier on. But it takes defenseman time, as the Dale talent line is 200 to 300 games around that mark. But working with him last year and what you see that you can possibly see this year in terms of the ceiling that he can kind of get to and the character he seems like one of those great guys that everyone loves. When he left the Leafs organization, it was all caught on TSN, like how many guys went up to him and said goodbye to him and how much they appreciated him. Can you kind of talk about the character, the person, the player that you have in Rasmus Sandin?
Yeah, Rasmus is, I think is just kind of scratching the surface of where he can potentially go with his game. I thought he had a good hockey season for us last year. I think he's, in my conversations with him this off season is basically telling him like, hey man, I think he got another level and we got to get to that. We got to, I think he's got more offense to his game than maybe his game leads to when you watch him play. Not that he's a safe player, he's a responsible player, but I think there's more to it. So we've had that conversation. He's another guy that can chew up a lot of minutes too. Like he played a lot of heavy minutes for us, especially when we had some injuries early in the hockey season. And I know he's had a big off season in terms of like really working on his conditioning and making sure he's in tip top shape to kind of be more of a 200-foot type defenseman for us. And so that's exciting to get back to work with him on. But he's a guy, he's a hockey nut. He knows a lot about the game. He's about 23 going on 33 in terms of his tutelage and guys respecting him and knowing guys around the league. He's a smart young man, and we're expecting big things from him. And he just got a brand new contract kicking in this year,
Yeah.
so he's got to answer the bell on that a little bit now.
Yeah, exactly. I want to talk about a defenseman you guys drafted not too long ago in Cam Allen. I got to see him at the Heinke Gretzky Cup. I don't know how much of you got to see him throughout his career so far. Obviously, still a young prospect with you guys. He's a third round pick. To me, from what I seen in him, I think he was the captain of the Heinke Gretzky Cup too, and the leadership that I saw in that tournament, and also the style of play that he plays, I think that's going to be a player for you guys down the road. I know you don't want to rush defensemen, but and you guys have a lot of in depth in terms of the whole picture of the defenseman you guys have in your pool. We don't want to just single out one guy, but he's a guy that, like, I even said to Craig Button several times throughout that tournament, like there's just something about him that just pops to me, and just kind of you being around and seeing his game, and obviously him coming into camp this year to get some seasoning and probably get some preseason games, and then I would assume maybe he's going to first year pro. But talking about him, or maybe he played pro last year. I didn't do the full homework on that, so I apologize. But the great player that he could possibly be for you guys in terms on the back end and being that big right shot defenseman too.
Yeah, so small sample size for me, Josh, with
Yeah.
Cam is, last year I got to watch him at development camp in Washington. I was freshly hired there at that time, so I was kind of, getting my bearings under me in terms of our prospect pool. And then I, obviously got a chance to watch him this development camp. He did have surgery on an ailment that he had that he affected him in his last year junior in Guelph. So he's healthy now. He looked healthy in development camp. Obviously, we're looking forward to seeing him here at camp at the end of the month. And, but he's an intriguing player when you watch him play. And again, small sample size development camp. It's, there's not a lot going on there other than just, development and tutelage for those young players. But there's something there. I mean, having a right shot defenseman that can skate and is a headsy player, those don't grow on trees, and you got to have a lot of those pieces in your organization depth wise. And we're fortunate we got a few young right shot defensemen that as we kind of age as a NHL group, that those guys will be hopefully knocking on the door for playing in the National Hockey League. So we're excited about him. I'm really excited to watch him at camp when he, gets through rookie camp and then comes to main camp. I mean, that's when you really kind of start to see those guys a little bit more closely as a coach.
Yeah, for sure. Let's move over to some minor hockey in terms of stuff there, and also for coaches and players, and more or less, we'll have a conversation on advice for kids going into tryouts right now. Any advice, and also coaches who are evaluating these kids during tryouts, and I guess you can say parents too. But what kind of advice would Mitch Love give, to the younger players going into any age group at the U13 level, higher, or even at the U9, U7 level. With tryouts pretty much starting this weekend here in Edmonton and next week and the weeks on. Any advice you would give some of these minor hockey kids that are, trying to play through, learning the ropes in terms of getting an opportunity to be drafted, or, looking at opportunities in the NCAA when that time comes?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing, Josh, for young players nowadays is just worry about yourself. Like
Yeah.
worry about your own game. Like if I'm going to a tryout and I'm a young player, don't worry about the outside noise, whether it's coming from your parents, it's coming from other parents, it's coming from other kids. We're in such a society now where it's status this, status that, and this is where I played last year. This is the team I'm going to make. No matter what team you're trying to make, whether it's a low level, high level, you have to focus in as an athlete on what makes you good as a hockey player. And so if I'm a goal scorer and that's what I've been my whole life and I'm trying to make this AAA team, then go score goals in the tryout. Don't worry about, little Joey Smith beside me and how many goals he has. Worry about the goals that you need to score because that's what makes you a good hockey player and that's what's made you a good hockey player. If you're a competitive defenseman and you lean on people and you're physical, then that's the type of player you got to be in the camp. Don't worry about somebody else doing that. So it's that's the best advice I could give. I'm obviously very far removed from the youth hockey background and what goes on now, and I'll kind of further that conversation with as a parent, just support your child, but again, don't worry about who else is doing what out there. Worry about what you can do to help your son or your daughter be the best athlete they can during that tryout, and then obviously leading into their hockey season, and be supportive of that. And I think, you see a lot of it now, and you see it probably a little bit, in your circles that it's crazy out there, man. It's crazy. These people are, it's kind of a rich man's game, and parents treat it that way when it's you at the end of the day it's about the kids, and
Yeah.
I think that's probably the best advice I can give you.
Yeah. No, it's great. That's great advice. Definitely something I'm going to pass on, and try to, spread that out in terms of helping these kids. I feel it's a stressful time. Like I go every Saturday, I go, for therapy, and for my mental health. And I was at the therapist, just in the office yesterday, and I just saw a pamphlet on the table, just waiting for my therapist to come grab me to go in, and just the great things that they do in terms of sessions that are leading into mental health during tryouts. I thought it was pretty cool that, therapists are doing that, in terms of trying to help out, because there is a lot of stress level, I would assume, for some of these kids, because kind of what you were saying, in a way, if you're not worrying about yourself and you're worrying about, Joe Smith, that could be a lot, and you don't need to waste all that energy or that mind racing in that possible way, where you just need to worry about the game that you're playing and that you can play and that you have played leading into that season that you're going to try out for. So I think that's great advice from you, Mitch. Any advice for coaches? I'm going to be an assistant coach. This will be my first time actually being an assistant coach. I've done a lot of directors and managing roles before, but joining Doug Ockenberg's coaching staff this year. So any kind of advice you would give myself, or even just other coaches that are going to be listening to this podcast, in terms of, at any level of coaching, what kind of advice would you pass on to someone?
uh, I can only obviously speak from past experience. I think the biggest thing that I've felt that's allowed me to find a connection with the player is the constant communication and the open dialogue that I have with the players. I've always taken the approach as a coach. I'm almost brutally honest with them about their play, not in a disrespectful way, but I'm just honest in my assessments. And so I think that at any level, obviously, depending on the youth level and the age of the athlete, you got to be careful. But in junior, even I think 13, 14, 15-year-old kids, I think if they feel, Josh, if they feel that you're helping them, or the advice that you're giving them or the tutelage you're giving them is going to help them, they're going to respect that, and they're going to go through a wall for you as a coach, and they're going to do some things, and then you're going to praise them for that when they do those things, because that's what they need to hear from a coach, because they respect coaches. So I think that's no different than I'm working with NHL defensemen or NHL players. I'm just honest with them, not in a way that I'm criticizing them, other than just, hey, I think you can stay away from this situation tonight, or hey, I think your ball play's got to be a little bit better here. Just my opinion, and just, but allow them to speak too, allow them to talk. I mean, that's where we've gone with athletes now. Is it's not just the dictatorship from the coach to the player. It's a partnership between the athlete and the coaches, and you got to be open to that as a coach and hear that out, and then kind of work together with the player. So that's probably the advice I give that would be beneficial to all levels. And the one thing I would say is when you're present, your energy is so key. Like you're going to go to a cold rink in the middle of December in Edmonton.
Yeah.
You bringing the energy, the positive energy and enthusiasm, that goes a long ways with players. They sense that. They're smart. They're smart people. They'll understand that, hey, coach is here to work today. Coach is here. He's excited to be here. I have no excuse not to be the same. And I think that's very key.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for that. I think that's very important and very well said again by you. Mitch, I think that's all the time we put aside today. Really appreciate you being a part of this pod in terms of coming back on again. And we're hoping to our team and other teams where we can take meeting you guys again this year. I know last year was a huge success when Spencer and the guys came out, and just in terms of you guys being there and present for us, that team definitely meant a lot to them and those kids and those coaches. So it's something that we love to do on our podcast and giving back to the game, and I know it's pretty cool that coaches and the players do too. It takes just 5 minutes out of the day to take a picture or conversation. Could just make a big difference. It's the good memories that we can leave behind in this world that will be pretty sweet. So continued success to you. I'm going to be watching you, and all the best to you and the coaching staff and your family this year. And we will be looking forward to seeing you when you roll through Edmonton, Mitch.
That sounds good, Josh. Thanks for having me on again, and I look forward to seeing you and all the kids there in January when we come through Edmonton.
Perfect. Awesome. Take care. Have a good one.
You too. Thanks, buddy.
Huge thanks to Mitch Love for joining us again on the 2 Months podcast. It's pretty special to have an assistant or any head coach joining us on our pod, and the great words and the great advice that he provides for our listeners, for our fans, and for our minor hockey kids listening, and our parents listening, and our coaches and myself. It definitely means a lot, and building those relationships are definitely huge in the game of hockey. And again, can't thank Mitch enough and the Capitals organization, just first class as they always are. So we're looking forward to connecting with them in January when they roll through Edmonton, and it's going to be pretty sweet. So today obviously was just solo with just me and Mitch today, but I know there's some news that people have been DMing us about in terms of the Leon Draisaitl contract, and a few other things there. I know that it looks pretty cool in terms of the fact that he's going to sign an 8-year deal, but everyone's also on ants thinking, hey, what's going on here? It's the end of August, and he hasn't signed yet. So maybe anxiety is rolling in for some of their fans. But again, everything that we know and hear, this should not be a problem. This deal should get done. Um, the only thing we can really say is what we've been told a couple of weeks ago from the sources that we spoke to. It's going to be an 8-year deal, and it's going to be $13.5 million. Leon Draisaitl has taken a discount to stay in Edmonton. I know other reporters have said it will be an 8-year deal in around the 14 to 14.5 or $15 million range. But at the end of the day, it looks like he's going to sign. I'd be surprised if he does not sign. I know he is coming to Edmonton pretty quick here. If not, he'll be here this week, and he'll be kind of skating with some of the guys, and then their captain skates will be starting pretty soon after that. So I know he's early to Edmonton often, so we'll see where that goes. But it looks pretty good. It looks promising. I wouldn't be too nervous about it, but it sounds like it's going to be an 8-year deal, around $13.5 million on the AAV for Leon Draisaitl. I'd be surprised again if this does not get done before training camp. If it does not get done before training camp, then knowing his representatives, they will not negotiate during season, and this will linger on into the summer after the cup finals over. But I would be surprised again if that goes that way. I know Mike Liute is an agent that normally doesn't deal a lot within season and kind of lets it play out. But and they were pretty vocal in some of the articles they did. Let's get this done, and let's get this done before training camp, or else. So I'd be surprised if the Oilers are being tough here. From what I know, Leon, Connor, and Evan Bouchard, they all kind of had conversations 10 days after. There was a conversation that we got wind of them and a few other players. Let's take less because, Hyman, theoretically took less. And, obviously, Nugent Hopkins took less. So there's some guys that took less along the way here in terms of not and I know Adam Henrique left a lot of money and a little bit more term on the table with some other teams and took less and came back to Edmonton. And, obviously saw Connor Brown too. Took the big money last year, but then took less this year. So that was a focus of conversation between, the three players there. So yeah, and I think the biggest thing what I understood they sat down with with Darnell Nurse's contract too. Like if these guys take the most amount of money they possibly could take, and you add Nurse's deal in there, they saw that it's going to be tough for them to win around a $52 to $54 million cap of four players tied in to an $88 million to a $93 million salary cap. So they saw that was going to be pretty tough to, four players obviously taking, if not half, almost close to half the salary cap. That would be hardly it would be hard to win in that term. So we'll see where this goes. But everything we know in here, this should not be a problem. This should get done before camp. I'd be surprised if this deal is not done before September 10th. That's just a date myself that I've been told that to keep an eye on if it's not done before that date. But I think training camp opens on September 18th or 19th. So there is a lot of time here still, but it is ticking away. But yeah, everything we know, 8 years, $13.5 million. Leon Draisaitl will be leaving at least $1 million to $1.5 million on the table, and for the Oilers to add some more players along the way. And a lot of it too was the Jack Campbell buyout and some of the money that they will have to be eating in that terms too. So these players were pretty smart in what we've been told in terms of writing this down and looking at it. So we'll see where it goes. Keep an eye on things for sure. But everyone, take care. We love you guys. Have fun. We'll catch up with you guys later in the week. Have a good one.